The greatness of Kevin Durant. Boy, do I wish this man was a New York Knick. My heart would be so beautiful. Not so much L.A. I like their young crop of guys. When I think of Kevin Durant, I think about guys in L.A. When in L.A., I want a personality. In New York, I just want results. I don't give a damn if you're as boring as rain. I don't care. As long as you could play and you could get it done, that's all I care about in New York City. In L.A., I want showtime. I want pizzazz. I want a showman. I want a box office attraction. Not to say that he's not, but when you look at somebody like a LeBron James, it's a little bit different. When you look at the personality that comes with Laker Nation and what have you, it requires just a little bit different from what New York or New Yorkers require. That would just be me. But Kevin Durant, 25 points away from becoming the second youngest player in NBA history to reach 20,000 points for his career. Number one is LeBron James on that list, obviously. Number two is now Kevin Durant, who dropped 25 points in the first half. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to throw out some of these numbers because I have been on the record saying that I think Kevin Durant has an opportunity. Without question, I think he'll end up top 10 all time. I think he has a chance to be top 5 all time. I really, really do. Now, when we talk about my 5, I'm going by position per se. My top 5 would be Magic, MJ, LeBron, Tim Duncan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That would be my top 5. But you see, that's different positions. That's not just naming players. I got news for you. Kevin Durant keeps on this base. I got to think about Kevin Durant and how I would put him on this team. And who's the one guy that I might take off? I might take off Magic. I know it might be sacrilegious to say that because Magic Johnson is the greatest point guard ever. He's a 5-time champion. He galvanized the troops. He was the ultimate leader, which makes him in the eyes of many the greatest Laker of all time. For me, as great as Magic Johnson was as a leader and a winner, naturally born winner, his talent and skill level wasn't comparable to this brother. Kevin Durant is 6'11", y'all. He's got a 7'6" wingspan. He got a handle like a guard. He's a career 88% shooter from the free throw line. Ladies and gentlemen, the man hasn't shot less than 50% from the field in the last 5 years. He's a career 48.9% shooter, 38% from three-point range, 88% from the free throw line. He averages 27.2 points for his career. For his career. And the only reason, while the numbers are down by 2 points from his time in Seattle and OKC to the Golden State Warriors, is because he took 2 less shots per game. And for those of you wondering as to whether or not he shows up come playoff time, in the playoffs, although his percentage dropped by a couple of points in terms of shooting percentage, the dude is a career 28.8 point per game scorer in the playoffs. And over his last 6 times he's been in the postseason, he's averaged over 28 points. 28.6, 28.5, 38, 29.6, 28.4, 28.5. In case you're forgetting, he's the reigning NBA Finals MVP, averaging 35 a game on better than 53% shooter. The brother's on another level. Now, I've been on the record stating that his move to Golden State was the weakest move that I've ever seen by a superstar. I have not changed my mind. I still feel that way. But don't get it twisted. That's all I feel. It doesn't take anything away from his greatness as a player. What a superstar he is, and how I widely consider him to be the second best player on the planet. And I think that if he shows up during these NBA Finals, he'll actually eclipse LeBron. If he outplays LeBron again and he wins another NBA Finals MVP and another championship, I think it's time to say it's the Kevin Durant era. Ain't gonna be no more of this King James stuff. I'm sorry. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call. That's 888-729-3776. Another item I wanted to get into was that the Fritz Pollard Alliance is calling for an investigation into the Oakland Raiders hiring of John Gruden as its coach. They want an investigation because of the fact that the Rooney Rule may have been violated. Because the Rooney Rule, as you all know, essentially is a rule implemented to ensure that minorities will get interviews for jobs in the National Football League. And obviously the Raiders bypassed that, and Mark Davis, the owner for the Oakland Raiders, put his foot in his mouth because he basically conceded that John Gruden and he had reached a deal prior to the season's ending. So while John Gruden was in the booth working on Monday Night Football, according to Mark Davis, he had already agreed to become the next head coach for the Oakland Raiders. Even though we have John Gruden on tape, if Mark Davis is to be believed, apparently lying through his teeth about having a job. But that's neither here nor there. An investigation is what's being called for by the Fritz Pollard Alliance, led by John Wooten, the chairman for the Fritz Pollard Alliance, obviously present and in association with the NFL to improve minority relations and things pertaining to opportunities for minorities. Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, I am a black man hosting this national radio show. And I will sit here on this nationally syndicated radio show and tell you all, as a black man, this call for an investigation has zero merit. There is no reason for it to take place. The Oakland Raiders have John Gruden as their coach. And folks, I hate to break it to you, but the investigation is not warranted. Do you know why? John Wooten was on the record talking about how the Raiders didn't violate the policy because they did interview minority candidates. And on top of it all, no team is compelled to inform the league of candidates that were interviewed that aren't associated with the league. Even though that is wrong because ESPN is associated with the NFL because we're in partnership with the NFL. And as the voice of Monday Night Football, that means John Gruden was associated with the NFL. Even though that's true. Fritz Pollard Alliance is already on the record saying that there was no need. There was no problem with the hiring process. So a week later, you've changed your mind. Tough cookies. And oh, by the way, Reggie McKenzie is an African American who happens to be the general manager of the Oakland Raiders. Why in the hell did you not go to your boss, Mark Davis, and say, before we announce that John Gruden is the coach, let me interview these minority candidates, which, by the way, Reggie McKenzie told the Fritz Pollard Alliance and others that he had actually done, but also bring them out in a public forum so everyone could know who they are. Why did you not do that? I respect John Wooten. I respect Reggie McKenzie and what he has accomplished in his career. In this particular sequence, as it strictly and solely pertains to the hiring of John Gruden by the Oakland Raiders, the ball was dropped. And it was dropped by two black men. That is not the NFL's problem. And now it's not even the Oakland Raiders' problem. It would happen to be ours as a community. Because for a moment, we forgot what the spirit of the Rooney Rule was all about. I am younger than Reggie McKenzie. I am younger than John Wooten. Without question, I'm not more knowledgeable, and I certainly haven't made their sacrifices. I respect both men, and in no way am I trying to castigate them. I'm simply pointing out a fact. They dropped the ball on this. That's their problem. That's our problem as a community. It is not the NFL problem. It is not the Oakland Raiders problem. And it certainly shouldn't be John Gruden's problem. It absolutely should not be his problem. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. The number to call up as always is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Your calls and more coming up in a minute. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
The number to call up as always is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Listen, we got a lot of stuff to get into, some NBA action, the way Kevin Durant looked last night, the way he looks, and what your expectations are for this season, Cleveland and their struggles. Who's your surprise in the NBA this season? Who's your biggest disappointment? In a little while, I'm going to tell you who my biggest disappointment is in the NBA thus far. Who my biggest disappointment is in the NBA thus far. And I'm not playing. I'll be getting into all of that. Plus, I'll be getting into Mike Mitchell and his damn comments. I'm a Steelers fan. How could you open your mouth about Tom Brady and the New England Patriots like that? I mean, what are you thinking? Oh, I can't wait to touch on that subject as well. But I ended the first segment one, talking about the Rooney Rule. Ladies and gentlemen, understand something. We live in a mosaic. Sometimes it's absolutely positively gorgeous, particularly when you compare it to the rest of the world. But in the United States of America, you have a lot of people that are sitting there talking about, what the hell are you worried about what's going on in the rest of the world first? Have you not looked at what's going on in our country? You got some people that's for building a wall, some people that are against it. But universally, practically, almost everybody is asking $18 billion on a wall. You know how much $18 billion could do to resolve some of the problems that exist right here in the United States of America? These are the kind of things that people talk about. And as it pertains to the Rooney Rule, where you're talking about the National Football League, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on it, but it's important to bring up. It's important to articulate. See, this is one of those examples that I want to use to emphasize and illuminate how fair-minded I am. I don't care that a black candidate doesn't have the Oakland Raiders job. I think it's perfectly understandable why the Raiders picked John Gruden. John Gruden is synonymous with Raider Nation. Those people love him. And if you're the Oakland Raiders and you have an opportunity to give the fans what they want to see, especially when it comes to coaching, because you damn sure can't seem to do it on the field, why not hire John Gruden? Even if it did cost you $100 million. I understand. There's no issue with a minority not getting that job. The problem is when the rule is clearly in place that minority candidates have to be interviewed. Yes, you have to interview them. No, you do not have an obligation to showcase them. John Wooten of the Fritz Pollard Alliance was right when he said that last week. Reggie McKenzie didn't violate any rules. But if you're John Wooten, almost 80 years of age, as knowledgeable and as seasoned as you are, you're gonna know about crawling and walking 1,000 times better than me. So if the man interviews two minority candidates, what in God's name makes you think minority candidates are benefited by them being interviewed but nobody knowing about the damn interview? What purpose does that serve? I'm looking at my producers, Nuno and Jonathan and Kat. Am I wrong? What purpose does it serve if you haven't let everybody know who the damn candidate is? How does that help the minority candidate? How does it help? And if you're Reggie McKenzie, who's an African-American executive in the National Football League, you're a general manager, for Christ's sakes. How do you not know that we need to see that man, whoever you interviewed, walking out in front of the camera with the world knowing you interviewed him for the job? How do you not know the benefit of that? How do you not know? Now, I'm in Atlanta the other day, Tuesday to be exact. National championship game aftermath. And I had the distinct pleasure of speaking to Mr. David Dickey, who runs a radio station there in Atlanta, Georgia. And to hear this man speak so fervently, so enthusiastic and optimistically about sports talk radio and about the various communities that exist within the Atlanta area, and especially urban areas throughout Atlanta, minority communities throughout Atlanta, you got something special. This man is coming. I know a winner when I see one. This man is special. And you're talking about an individual that's paying attention to dollars and where they're emanating from in regards to all communities. You're also talking and listening to him talk about what works. What are the kind of things that people want to hear? What do they want to see? And how attaching something that's visible, that's almost tangible, that you can reach out and touch and you feel like you've got a personal relationship with it, how it matters. Reggie McKenzie might not have gotten the general manager's job that way, but he certainly could have facilitated that kind of opportunity happening for others. If John Gruden, simple question, ladies and gentlemen, because you might be asking, Stephen A., where's he going with this? Simple question. If John Gruden had not been on Monday Night Football all of these years, would the Oakland Raiders have spent $100 million to get him? Of course not. You were willing to pay that kind of money because John Gruden was synonymous with football. And his football acumen and his football brilliance was something that you couldn't escape, because every Monday night throughout every NFL season since, 2009, you heard this man's voice. You saw his face. And the relevancy of it is what propelled him to this height. Doc Rivers became a champion for the coach of the Boston Celtics. How he get the damn job? Would it have had something to do with the tremendous work he did as a broadcaster on ABC prior to that? Jeff Van Gundy has been candidate for numerous jobs. You think him working on ESPN and ABC has something to do with that? John Lynch is the general manager for the San Francisco 49ers. You think him being in a booth calling NFL games might have had something to do with that? Alex Rodriguez, with his steroid cheating self. If you listen to the reports, the Mitchell Report and others, this dude is now somebody being pursued. Fox loves him. I have no doubt this network loves him. Everybody loves Alex Rodriguez now. Why? Because he did a good job on Fox's pregame and postgame MLB show. What the hell you think? Everybody wants him because he's dating J-Lo? Of course not. Popularity matters. Charisma matters. And when the combination of both is something that people perceive you as having, it elevates your stock, which increases the possibility of you landing a job. How in God's name could Reggie McKenzie not know that? How does that happen? But let me quiet down, because God forbid that Stephen A.'s content gets lost in the shuffle because I'm a bit loud. Let me try this again. How could Reggie McKenzie not know that? How could Reggie McKenzie not know that? Is that better? I hope so. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Your calls are more in a minute. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Looking at the news right now, seeing that Norv Turner finalizing a deal to become the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers. I have no problem with that. He's previously been a head coach or an offensive coordinator on 9 different teams. He was a head coach in the NFL for 15 years. He only made the playoffs 4 times. Had he been if he was in the process of getting interviewed for the head coaching job, I'd have a big problem with that. Him as an offensive coordinator, however, that's an entirely different thing. It really, really is. I mean, when you look at Norv Turner right now, last 4 years since he finished up as a head coach with the San Diego Chargers in 2012, 2013, he was in Cleveland. They had the worst rushing attack. Okay. Wasn't bad passing attack, but it's Cleveland. We understand that. Last 3 years, he was in Minnesota with Teddy Bridgewater. And then obviously this year, this year when you look at him, it's like, hey, no, I'm sorry, not this year, but last year, Minnesota. He was in Minnesota last year. They ranked dead last with their rushing attack. They had the 18th ranked passing attack. But, Teddy Bridgewater had gone down. Sam Bradford wasn't that great. So the offensive numbers don't look so great. He's got something to prove, but one could argue he didn't have as much to work with over the last 3 years in Minnesota. But he's been whether it's a head coach or an offensive coordinator, he's got a 26-year career in the NFL. And I don't think him being with Cam Newton is a bad deal. I really, really don't. 888-729-3776. It's 888-SAY-ESPN. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Home Insurance. Getting a quote is easier than ever before. To the phones we go. Let's go to John in the Bronx. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, John.
Stephen A.Smith, man. I just want to know, I respect you so much, man. I've been watching you since I was 15. I'm 27 now. It's first time calling in. I'm just saying don't change for nobody, all right?
Thank you, man. Go ahead. Appreciate
all right,
it.
so my first question is, it's a comment on Kevin Durant. Well, the first question is Kevin Durant the number one option in Golden State?
I'm sorry?
Is Kevin Durant the number one option in Golden State right now?
Well, listen, Steph Curry is a superstar, and he's the greatest shooter that I've ever seen. But I think that he's one, and if there was two 1As, it would be both of them. I've seen them interchangeable. One time, some nights I see Kevin Durant being a primary option. Other nights I see Steph Curry.
Okay. Now, why I say I can't agree with the top five situation is I really can't agree with that, man. I look at it.
I said right eventually. I didn't say right now.
No, of course, eventually. I can't see that even with going down the line. Especially, even if he changes teams right now, I could probably say that. But as of right now, he's playing free basketball, man. It's an all-star team he has. He's more free than he was in OKC, but I can't say that he's going to be. As of right now, I can't see it, man. I just can't see it. I'm not knocking the guy because he's great. Don't get me wrong. Offensively, he's great, but I can't knock it. I can't say it. I can't see it.
Well, listen. Here's what I would say to you. Kevin Durant is a career 27-point per game scorer. Okay, he's done it his entire career. It's not like he's elevated his level of play in Golden State. His numbers have gone down in Golden State. And in Oklahoma City, he was playing with Russell Westbrook, who, as great as he was, has a real problem being anything less than an alpha dog. And so as a result, it's an incredible adjustment that you have to make when you're playing with somebody that just does things their way. They don't have any ill intent or anything like that. It's just one way. They only know one way how to do it. And that's how Russell Westbrook is. If the only person that's Russell Westbrook's friend, okay, during a game is James Harden, his former teammate, who he never wanted to leave OKC. That's about it. Everybody else, Russell Westbrook, you his enemy, man. And sometimes his own damn teammates feel that way, or at least in the case of Kevin Durant. So we got to take that in consideration too. That can't be ignored. Appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Albert in L.A., you're live with Stephen A. Go ahead.
Hey, Stephen A., thanks for taking my call. Hey, the situation in Oakland, this is how I respect what you're saying, but this is how I see it. You got two brothers up there in a franchise business. You're in the media business. You're going to do the things for your concern in the media business, and they're going to do their concerns for the franchise.
What's the relevancy of that to this discussion?
Yeah, here's what I'm saying. If they have brought in a candidate or two candidates, they wouldn't have been candidates that would equal Gruden. They wouldn't even brought in someone that would equal him. So my point is this. Don't you think that you're being hard on them?
Absolutely not.
That's hurting. That's hurting black people too, right?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I totally emphatically disagree with you. Here's why. Because of Gruden's name and cachet combined with his association with Raider Nation, you are not looking bad if you bring in a minority candidate and they happen to be second tier compared to them or a Bill Belichick or Parcells or a Jimmy Johnson or somebody. Because when you do that, they certainly ain't going to be second tier to a Jack Del Rio. They certainly ain't going to be second tier to a Jason Garrett or somebody along those lines. But the key element here in terms of the implementation of the Rooney Rule was to bring attention to minority candidates that were not otherwise receiving it. And that was the purpose of it all, because they were always able to say, well, we consider this person, that person. You don't know that we didn't consider them. Well, damn it, we need to know because we don't believe you. That's why the Rooney Rule was implemented. So how do you, as an African American, play a role in duplicating the kind of behavior that was taking place, arguably, before you ever became an executive? Because that's the kind of things they used to do. Well, we talked to somebody. You didn't know, but we actually talked to these people. Really? When did you? How did the interview go? What kind of candidate were they? Why didn't you let everybody know you did it? These are the kind of issues that were existing prior to the implementation of the Rooney Rule, which is why the Rooney Rule was necessary.
Stephen A., you're saying superficially bring them up, even though it's a superficial act that everybody knows that it is.
But you missed my bigger point. Yes, you can look at it as superficial. And normally, under normal circumstances, I would totally side with you on that. But when you have an elite candidate like a Gruden, a Belichick, a Bill Parcells, a Jimmy Johnson, somebody along those lines, where it is clear that that fan base and that organization wants that person, there's still nothing wrong with you saying, had it not been for this guy, these are the kind of guys we were looking at, and the rest of y'all should look at them. There's nothing wrong with doing that under those circumstances. Nothing at all.
I agree. It's just that when you hit them as hard as you're hitting them, that even hurts. Aren't you glad that they're there in that organization?
I'm not calling for them to be fired. I'm not calling for them to be fired. I'm reminding them of what their responsibilities are. When you thought I was wrong, you didn't hesitate to call up to this show and tell me, because you want to hold me accountable to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So how come I can't do that with them?
You're doing okay. I'm not complaining about what you're doing.
I'm doing a hell of a lot better than okay, bro. But I thank you so much for your comment, and I appreciate you listening to the show. And feel free to call back anytime. 888-729-3776. 888-SAY-ESPN. More to Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio in a minute.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Valentine's Day is coming up. And you know what that means, right? Love Doctor's here. Love Doctor's here. I'm here for all of y'all. Now, I ain't talking about myself. You understand? I'm not good at practicing what I preach when it comes to the Love Doctor. But the Love Doctor gives good advice. Got the Love Doctor, stole a segment from Martin Lawrence, one of my favorite all-time comedians, who I have to have on this show one day because he makes me laugh every day. I watch at least an episode of Martin Lawrence every day. Every day. He's hilarious, and I miss him. So, Love Doctor. Get on out of here. I'm the Love Doctor. Remember that segment when Tommy and Pam hooked up? Some of y'all might not know about it. Most of y'all do. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's the number to call up. I'm going to hold off on something I wanted to air for y'all. Talking about my biggest disappointment of the NBA season. I'm going to start off hour number 2 with that. Because I got a lot to say immediately after y'all hear that sound. It is necessary. And here's a hint. Folks in the nation's capital, pay attention. Please listen in. You don't want to miss what I got to say at the top of hour number 2. Back to the phones we go. Josh in South Carolina, you're live with Stephen A. What's up, Josh?
What's up, Stephen A., man? I had a quick comment for you. And first thing I want to say is thank you so much for this show.
Thank you.
We finally have a great show in this time slot leading up to our legend here in Charleston, Bobby Harden.
Thank you, man.
But my comment for you is, don't you need to only execute the Rooney Rule if there's a job opening? And according to Mr. Davis, they had Gruden lined up before Del Rio was out the door. So if there's no opening, there's no Rooney Rule needed.
No, Josh. No, Josh, you're wrong, man. Here's why, okay? I respectfully say that you're wrong, but I want you to listen to why. If that were the case, Reggie McKenzie, the general manager for the Oakland Raiders, would have never mentioned that they had interviewed candidates to begin with. So what I'm trying to say is by virtue of of doing the interview process, it's because you felt you had to. And if you had to do it, my point is, why not feel compelled to publicize it? Nobody's saying that you had to hire the candidate, because we understand that Gruden is Gruden and he's synonymous with Raider Nation. And we know that if he wanted that job, it was going to be his. And even if you knew that he was the guy that you were bringing on board, that's fine. But the purpose of the Rooney Rule, which all the owners signed on for, was to elevate the profile of minority candidates who were otherwise being held back and pushed behind curtains where you could never know nor appreciate their value. So what I'm saying is, yeah, John Gruden might have been your coach, Josh, but what's wrong with sitting there and saying, man, if it wasn't for John Gruden, these are some people we would have looked at right here.
Oh, yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I agree with you.
And what I'm saying is the fact that an African-American GM didn't make that call is disappointing.
I got you.
Go ahead.
But maybe it's Mr. Davis. Maybe that's where I'm getting lost here, because it made it seem like there wasn't an opening to begin with.
Well, again, you're focused on the opening. I'm saying forget the opening. Even if it was shut because John Gruden was going to be your head coach, it's about prioritizing that there is a profile that needs to be built on behalf of minority candidates who otherwise can't get those opportunities. That's the whole objective. And that objective was passed on by somebody who happens to be an African-American executive of all people. That is the disappointment, and that's where it all comes from. Josh, I got to go, but I appreciate the call. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Hour number 2, we'll get more into the NFL playoffs, week 2 of the NFL playoffs, plus my biggest disappointment of the NBA season. You don't want to miss this. Talk to y'all in a second.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.